And 3, 2, 1, blast off! Hi everybody, and welcome to Cap at Home. My name is Miss Allie, and today we are going to be making paper roll rockets. And what we are going to need are a few pieces of paper, at least one full sheet, and then I have a bunch of colors of scraps, some scissors, a glue stick or some tape, a paper roll, and some optional markers, stickers, anything that you want to decorate. And so I have a couple different decorations on mine, and some optional streamers or tissue paper. If you don't have that, construction paper will work just fine. All right, let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do is take our first full piece of paper. We're going to fold it in half, hot dog style. Make sure you have a crease on that. Open it up, and we're going to cut along that line. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to set half of that aside, and I'm going to take this half, and I'm going to take my paper roll, and I'm going to glue this down. And this is actually going to be the body color of our rocket. So, if you have tape, you can use that. I'm going to use my glue stick, and I'm just going to glue this end. I added a lot of glue on there to make sure it sticks, and I'm just going to put my paper roll down there. And I'm going to kind of place my fingers on it, make sure it sticks really good. And then I'm going to add some glue to the other part of it, of the paper, so when I start to roll my paper roll on the paper, it'll just stick. And again, I like to push my fingers over it to make sure it sticks down really good. And I'm going to keep doing that until I fill up, get my roll completely covered. And once I get to this point, I always want to cover up the paper a little bit. Once I get to this point, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut off my excess paper, set that aside in my scraps, and I'm just going to glue this little edge down. Again, if you have tape, that works fine too. Push my fingers down, and I have just a little bit of excess, and I think that's fine. If you have a lot of excess paper, you can just go ahead and cut that off, but just a little bit is fine. So this is the body of our rocket. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to take another piece of scrap paper, and we're going to make the top or the roof of our rocket. So choose a color that you would like the top to be. I like this bright green color, and I'm actually just going to cut out a big circle. You can trace something or draw out your circle in pencil or marker first if you want. And a nice trick to make sure your circle's even is to fold it in half. And then you can cut around the edges. And now you know that your circle will be even on both sides. Like that. So I have my scraps. I'm just going to put those aside. When I open it up, I have this circle shape. So what I want to do now is take my scissors and make a nice little line right up to the center line that I made, this fold. So I'm making a slit right here, right in the middle. Okay, and this is going to help us make our cone shape. So when you fold over, see how it makes that cone? And the nice part about folding your paper in half when you make your circle is that not only does it give you a line to cut to, but when you fold over your paper to make the cone, this folded line kind of matches up with your straight line of your cut, so you kind of know where it's going to go. So I'm going to take my glue stick and glue that area really good. And again, if you have tape, that's fine too. I'm going to take my fingers and press down really good. And sometimes I like to even glue on the other side just to make sure that it's going to stick down on the inside here. So again, I'm going to press my fingers down. And we have our cone of our rocket. So now you can decorate the cone or save that till the end, and we can attach the cone first. So this is kind of a tricky part. You might have to fidget with it, but this is where I like to use some tape. Again, if you have glue, that's fine too. It'll work just fine. But if you have tape, I recommend taking a little piece of tape right there and stick it on top. And the reason that I put it on there first is because when we put our cone down, I'm going to sort of place it so the tape is sticking up, so that I can put my cone, and the tape kind of makes like an L shape, attaching the cone to the bottom of the paper roll. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Again, this is kind of a tricky part, so sometimes you might have to fidget with it for a minute or two to make it to stick where you like it. But when you get it close to where you want it, and so I think that one side sticks up just a little bit, so I'm going to tape it a little extra down right there. Like that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's how I would attach it. Again, if you have glue, you can glue it down, or if you have a glue bottle, that might work to glue the edges down on the rim of your paper roll. So now we have our little rocket top. Now we have to make a couple of things. So I like to add little windows on mine going up, so you can kind of see our happy astronauts in our rocket. So I like to take another piece of paper, and again, I just have some scrap, so I'm going to take a little piece of this. Whoa, I almost dropped my scissors. I'm going to take a little piece of this red paper. And a trick to make sure all your windows are the same shape or size is, so I'm going to fold this part down, and then I'm going to fold it over, sort of like I'm doing an accordion fold. So there's 3 pieces of paper here. And I'm going to cut out a small circle. This way I only have to cut out 1. I'm going to make those a little smaller. But this way I have 3 now. And these are my little windows. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these on. And so whatever side your line is where your paper meets, I like to consider that the back. So on the other side of that, I'm going to glue my little windows on. And again, if you use a glue stick or glue, you don't really notice where the line is, but I know. So I'm going to glue my little windows down with my glue stick. And you can have just 2 windows if you want to have 3 windows. If you don't want to put any windows down, that's fine too. It's totally your rocket. You can make it look how you want it to. All right. So again, I kind of press down really good, and I have a couple of windows. So I think that looks pretty good so far. So I have a couple of these scraps here. I'm going to set this aside. And the next thing we have to do is make our wings of our rockets. So I'm going to take another color. Again, this is why I have a lot of scrap paper. So I have a lot of options for colors. I'm going to take this nice orange paper, and I'm going to kind of cut out a square. And I'm going to fold the square in half. All right. And I like to do this because you kind of need a right angle triangle, so where you have some same sides. So I'm going to cut out, and again, it can be kind of smaller triangles, be any shape that you want, but this is my triangle, and the reason I cut it in half is I fold it in half is so I can cut along this folded line and have 2 of the exact same size and shape triangles. So I'm going to use these as my wings for my rocket. So this is kind of an easy step. So we're going to take on the 2 sides of our windows. So I'm going to make 2 little slits in the side of the paper roll. And this just kind of helps us keep our wings in place. And I try and make them even to each other, but they're not always perfect, but that's okay. And so I just took my scissors and just made this little kind of cut right in there. And the reason that we do that is because when we go to attach our wings, they kind of just stick in there really nicely, so we can tape them in. So I just kind of set it in there, and I have a piece of tape ready. Again, this is where tape kind of comes in handy. And I'm just going to tape the back of it. Again, if you have a little extra tape, you can just go ahead and cut that off. All right, so I have one side of my rocket, and I'm going to go ahead and do that again on the other side. And I'm making sure that my triangle is kind of flat to the ground. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of set it in the slit, take a small piece of tape, and attach it to the back. And so this is kind of a fidgety part again, but once you get it, it'll stick right in there. And the tape is just to make sure it sticks just fine. So there's part of our rocket. All right. So now we can move on to make the fun part. And so that the blast off part, the thing that makes our rocket kind of cool, is the streamers, or the things that make our rocket fly. So if you have streamers or tissue paper, you can cut some little slits, or you can make some small strips, and you can attach them to the inside. If you don't have tissue paper or streamers, you can just use some small strips of construction paper, and that works fine as well. And so I just so happen to have some extra streamers lying around. When I was going through my studio, I found a bunch of them, so I'm going to use a couple of these. And so I'm just going to get a couple ready. And again, they can be as long or as short as you want them to be. And I have pink and blue, but if you want your little fire blast off to be more like a fire, you can make them yellow, orange, red. But it can be any color you want, just like your rocket can be any color that you want. And so I'm just kind of cutting some of these a little bit in half to make them more like, more smaller strips. All right. And so I actually just take them like this. And this, again, is where your tape might come in handy. And I'm going to take a piece of tape. You can also use glue for this. Take a piece of tape. I attach it to there, lift at the bottom of my rocket, and kind of tape it inside the paper roll. And I do that on both sides. And again, you can use any colors that you want. You can use paper, streamers, tissue paper, whatever you got around the house is just fine. Any colors that you want. You can even use your plain white paper and color it the color that you'd like it to be. All right, again, you can use glue or tape to attach it on the inside of your roll. I have tape. I think that is a little bit easier, but again, it doesn't matter that much. Make sure it sticks on there really good. And I have some fun little streamers for my rocket. If you want to make sure they're all the same size, when you got them all in there, you can hold them up and just cut them all together at the end. That way they're all the same size, but you don't have to. And I'm going to take these scraps and I'm just going to toss them again in my wastebasket. All right, so we have part of our streamers. And if you wanted to use construction paper, but you didn't want just straight plain strips, you could also just cut some small thin strips, and you could make them curly or kind of wavy by wrapping the paper around your finger or a pencil and kind of make your strips like that. Or you can take your strip and kind of make them zigzag, so folding it forward and back, and you kind of get this zigzag shape. And those can be in your rocket as well. Or you could do a combination of all of these things. So if I wanted to cut out a couple more of these, and let's say I'm going to take some of this little yellow paper, and I wanted to add these to my rocket as well with my tissue paper or streamers, you could do that. You could do a combination of everything that you have. So since I just cut those out, I'm just going to add those in really quickly. Again, it can be any sort of color or anything that you would like your rocket to look like. And I'm just going to add those in because why not? Add some more colors. All right. And again, I'm using tape, but you can use glue or anything else that you have available to you. And you might have to fidget with it to get it how you want it. All right, so I got my fun kind of rocket flames. So now the last step is to decorate it how you'd like it. If you have seen my examples right up here, I have drawn on some decorations, added some stickers. I also have some stickers on this one, and you can decorate it with anything that you might have around the house. If you want to put buttons or stickers, or if you have glitter, or you just want to like draw on with some markers. I like to add kind of like a circle around my windows to make them look more like windows. Kind of like that. And I have these fun smiley face stickers, and so I think they kind of look like people, so I might add them in the middle of my windows as my astronauts. And cool enough that this is happening around this time, but a few days ago, there was actually a rocket launch at the Kennedy Space Center, and a few astronauts actually went up to space. And if you're interested in learning more about that, you can ask your parents to help you look that up so you can find out more about that launch. So, I have a couple of these, and now I might want to add a few stickers. And so I have just a few kind of silly stickers that I had laying around. So I have some stars and things, and so I might add those on there just for fun. You can also draw anything on there, markers, crayons, colored pencils. You can do anything that makes you happy. It doesn't even have to be stars. It could be designs. You could draw something specific on there if you wanted your rocket to have some sort of design or saying. Totally up to you. I just have these cute little stars, so I'm going to add these. Just a few of them. Alright, kind of like that. And I might even actually draw a few things on there as well, to kind of fill up some of the space. Again, you can decorate it. You don't have to decorate it. You can use as many colors as you want. Totally up to you. It is your rocket. Alright, so I just added a few little fun stars on there. And my last step is I might add, I kind of like adding some designs to the top of my rocket, so I might just do that really quick. And I'm just kind of adding some lines on there to make the top of our rocket look a little bit more interesting. And this can also help, adding and decorating your rocket can help hide any of those markers, or can help hide any of those glue or tape that you have on there that you don't want people focusing on. So it kind of distracts and takes away from that. So when you get to this point, you are almost done. And the last thing that we need to do is clean up and make sure our space looks just like it did. So if you have any of these backs of these stickers, you want to throw these away. Any other scraps that you can't use, you want to throw those away. You want to make sure that your markers, if you use markers, have caps on them. You also want to make sure your glue stick has a cap on them. And when your space looks just how it did when you started, saving any of these extra scraps that you can use again, then you are ready to have your own rocket launch. So you can blast off and have fun with your own rocket. Fly it around, have fun. Thank you for joining me today on Cap at Home. Be sure to stay tuned for our next videos later on today at 1 and 2 p.m. Thanks for watching. Bye, guys.